The second hill they're going to have to climb is to align policies and whose policy actually puts forward. East or West policy? Palestine, Israel, Russia, Ukraine. They're going to have to sit down and say BEE or no BEE. And that's not just a...
So in this video, right, Neil the Bear is actually breaking down how the current battle in the GNU is most likely a battle between rhetorics of West and East, right? So it's almost like a battle between rhetoric between supporters of the West and supporters of the East. Let's listen to how he breaks this down, and I'll be back with some really interesting analysis on some of the weaknesses or threats that the GNU might be posing South Africa as we speak.
Because if you had to give today the Ministry of Justice to Helen Zille, we don't have a parliament, they'll have to dissolve it. That's my opinion. Now, here they sit. Not only are they going to have to get past these kinds of talking of the first hill, the second hill they're going to have to climb is to align policies and whose policy actually puts forward. East or West policy? Palestine, Israel, Russia, Ukraine. They're going to have to sit down and say BEE or no BEE. And that's not just a West-East favor, because we've in 30 years juggled this boat from president to president, from West to East. One likes Russia, the other one prefers America. That's it. So this government is now sitting with exactly the two opposites. One wants East, the other one wants West, and that's going to have to crack down right through policy decisions, economically and also policy. Now, Chris, there's no doubt that there is a huge conclave, cell, grouping of people in the ANC, and not just in the ANC, but in government, that has Jacob Zuma as a person that they respect, and might I be saying something called serve still. So you must make no mistake, Umkhonto where I come from, is a closed nucleus of people. You can't just evaporate it. You cannot just disappear the loyalty. It's like going to our old SANDF soldiers that are also war veterans, and you tell them they cannot coexist because the people from Dritte Deutsch 32 Battalion will remain. The people from the Parachute Battalion, it's a code. There's no difference to this. So there are people that swear to MK. There are people that swear to Jacob Zuma. Our problem, and I always tell people, is forget about the people in the ANC. When the apartheid government surrendered, yes, they surrendered, the uniformed conclave, when the security cluster had to be amalgamated with the MK and with the ANC's military wing, we had to have that scenario where the military, the police, and the security cluster of this country had to be amalgamated. And as this amalgamation grew, and it's 30 years later, I can tell you now that the majority of the people that are in control of the defense force of this country, I'm talking about the people that carry the sword, are MK. The majority of the leadership currently that are within the policing sword are MK. And the majority of people within the intelligence cluster are ex-MK, because there was integration, Chris. MK got integrated into the forces. So your problem does not just lie when you say, but it's an ANC thing, and it's a Jacob Zuma thing. No, it's a territorial thing. It is a loyalty thing. So your problem is going to be, how will Cyril, who, by the way, Cyril does not come from there. Cyril is a unionist. He comes from the mine workers union. He's not, as far as I'm concerned, just because you wear a bloody uniform doesn't mean that you're a soldier. It just means that you've got good fashion taste. So there are certain people that don the bloody uniform, and now they're suddenly a soldier. And you've seen some of them now go from uniform to gumboots in Parliament. But listen to me quickly. There are soldiers and there are soldiers. Cyril was not a front combatant. He was never a person which could be put on the same level as Kozani. It's not possible. So he needs to understand that amongst him, within the police, within the army, within intelligence, he's got people that will always remain loyal to MK and without a doubt have an affinity for Jacob Zuma. And that is another thing we've got to watch.
Brilliant speech. What do you guys think? I think it's really interesting to take note of some of the things that the bear mentions here. But for this video, I thought to go through some of the weaknesses and the threats that the government of national unity, as a new form of democracy in South Africa, might pose the electorate, and analysts might need to probably take note, and also the electorate in South Africa. The first being an ideological divergence and policy implementation. The ideological divide between the parties in the government of national unity is particularly pronounced on social policy. Now consider this question. Will DA ministers be expected to implement ANC policy? Are ANC ministers required to consider DA policy before dismissing it, or do they disregard it outright? Leaders who need to address these issues daily, and frankly, neither has demonstrated strong leadership in this area. Neither Ramaphosa nor Steenhuisen is particularly known for their expertise in policy, yet policy is central to governance. A case in point is Leon Schreiber's initial decision as Home Affairs to extend temporary visa concessions for foreign nationals. This authority was granted to Home Affairs by legislation under the assumption that the minister would enforce ANC policy, which aims to reduce the number of foreign workers to ensure companies hire underqualified locals. In just the first week, slight differences in approaches have already emerged, and these discrepancies are likely to grow significantly. Secondly, both parties have powerful executive committees that will continuously scrutinize their respective ministers. It appears that Steenhuisen will face a more difficult task in this regard, as many of Ramaphosa's allies are already within the cabinet. Nonetheless, Ramaphosa will also experience oversight pressures. Steenhuisen's most significant challenge is likely to be Helen Zille, who is known for her assertiveness and vocal opinions. Zille is not one to remain passive or silent and will be quick to confront Steenhuisen if she believes he is taking the wrong direction. Although not directly comparable, a historical parallel could be drawn with ministers outside the co-governing group who persistently urged de Klerk to exit the government of national unity in 1994. The third case is actually the fact that addressing the issue of different constituencies, the ANC and the DA have distinct criteria for defining success. For the DA's constituency, reduced government spending is likely viewed as positive, while for the ANC's constituency, it is viewed as negative. Now, this is a major clash. The fundamental issue of this is that the different constituencies of the two parties means that they are not engaging on the same grounds, but they are instead moving in opposite directions. Fourthly, trust between the parties is actually already low and deteriorating, even in the first week. A key issue is Ramaphosa's failure to inform the DA that every DA deputy minister would be paired with an ANC deputy minister. This significant omission undermines trust. For the government of national unity to function effectively, collaboration is important. However, with two deputy ministers, the DA deputy will essentially be redundant and will rarely fulfill the primary role of deputizing for the minister. This arrangement eliminates the forced interaction between the minister and the deputy that could have strengthened the government of national unity and facilitated joint resolution of the contentious issues before action is taken. Now, finally, the most pressing issue is the ANC's presumptive attitude. Having governed for over a generation, the party has not fully grasped the majority of the voters have voted against it. This is especially evident in negotiating regarding the Gauteng legislature. Despite receiving 35% of the vote, just slightly more than the DA's 27%, the ANC has refused to accede to the DA's demands for 4 of the 10 cabinet seats to disclose the number of seats allocated to the party. Now, what are the implications for the post-allocation and partnership guidelines for the government of national unity? We know that even a division of posts at a 40-60 ratio would not accurately reflect the election results and would favor the ANC disproportionately. A more equitable distribution would be 5 seats each. Consequently, the governance of the country's largest province is now susceptible to potential votes of no confidence at any time. In light of this unique circumstance, both parties must adhere to three fundamental principles if they intend to sustain the partnership. Firstly, they must foster trust and provide support to all participants in the negotiating process. Secondly, they must prioritize decisions that benefit the nation rather than the individual interest. And lastly, they must demonstrate generosity in understanding each other's perspectives and motivations. So these are some of the threats we've seen, that the GNU might likely face. We see a lot of the fact that, the ANC has not really fully grasped the loss of its support by the electorate, and it's still really bullheadedly, trying to still push for policies without regarding the fact that it might now really resort to power sharing with all these other smaller parties to that regard. And so that's one area that the ANC might need to overcome for a full fruition of partnership to take place for the government of national unity to push South Africa forward to a really positive light. But anyway, what do you guys think about this video? What do you guys think about Neil De Beer's speech here about the East-West dichotomy within the GNU? Share your thoughts right there in the comments.